Oh, welcome to Shyzalosophy. Here's your host, Shyzabox. Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Whoa! Whoa, girl! Whoa! Whoa! Get out of here! And the horse you rode in on. Oh. Hang tight, apprentice. We're doing our thing. So, anyhow, how is everyone tonight? We hope well. Because we're well. And if there's one thing that we are, it's looking forward to a great show. And by a great show, we mean a completed one. Okay? It's not necessarily going to be the best, but, it'll be like the best of the worst. Almost guaranteed. But, apprentice, we're done and we're set up now. We can stop stalling. Get out of here. Jeez. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shyzalosophy. And you might be asking yourself, well, what do you have in store for us tonight? What aspect and component of your minor in philosophy are you falling back upon? What are we going to be discussing? Well, you obviously didn't read the thumbnail or description or either one of those because we're obviously tonight talking about failure, right? So many aspects of failure. Now, you must remember, Shyzalosophy is based in conversation. It's based in fathoming what is virtually unfathomable. It's not rooted in fact. We don't have the budgets of the big Joe of the Rogans or the Tim of the Pools. Okay? There's no fact-checking here. So it's all rooted in conjecture and not fact. Therefore, it's a new branch of modern philosophy that's not related to, all that boring old philosophy stuff like Aristotle and Pluto. Who are those guys, right? The fathers of philosophy. Anyone can minor in philosophy. We did. Anyhow, let's catch up with all of this coming in. Geez, Ginger Army. Well, I don't know what any of that means, but good for you. Excellent. Anyhow, moving straight into it tonight. Like we said, Shyzalosophy rooted in conversation, in conjecture, in the what could be, in the possibilities. And tonight, the possibilities are virtually endless because we are talking about, obviously, failure, right? Scary word failure is. It can mean a lot of things. Okay, well, it can mean like one thing. Not succeeding, right? You might be asking yourself, what components of failure would you want to look head on? And if you're asking yourself that, well, then you've already completed the first step. Initiating a conversation for us to pad out an episode with which to elicit views and inevitably garner YouTube's money. But don't tell them that. Needless to say, you ask yourself, what components of failure are you willing to face head on? What aspects are there that you are willing to risk it for the biscuit to potentially miss out on, right? Are you going to apply for that next big promotion? Are you going to seek a job? Are you going to see if your card works at the restaurant and cross your fingers hoping it doesn't get declined? Whatever kind of risk of failure you take or you take on, you have the potential to succeed. Your card might not work every time you use it at a ATM or a debit terminal, but those times it does, it's magical, right? It's like there's money in there after all, right? It's a good experience, a good feeling. It's like when it's processing. You're like, well, shit, what else did I buy on that Amazon Prime deal day? What are you processing, guys? I either got it or I don't. And you're kind of making us a little worried. But on those occasions where it does go through, it's not a failure. And inevitably, that results in a success. So, the point is, any failure can become a success. And you might be asking, prove it. Well, we can't. But what we can do is talk about it. You give us a certain example, and we can tell you a successful outcome of it. Okay, you might be saying, okay, let's go with one of the easy ones. A team loses the Super Bowl. What is successful about that? Well, depends on how you're looking at that game, right? Two teams reach the Super Bowl. I wonder if all the players are guaranteed at least a minimum salary of, I think it's like $560,000 a year. Now, yes, they have to work for that, and their bodies take a lot of beatings in those practices, scrimmages, games, everything, right? It's not like they don't earn it. They're celebrities. They do their thing. They play on Sunday in obviously not rigged competition in any way, shape, or form, right? But components of it, you might be saying, where's the success out of a failure of a team losing the Super Bowl? Well, the success lies in those that bet against them, right? Anyone who said, these dudes ain't winning, I've seen what they do in the off season, and believe you me, it's not championship caliber, players or something, I don't know, but they win. Okay, that's a success. You might be saying the cities that get to hold the Super Bowl. That's a success for those local businesses. Maybe not as successful for people who don't follow the sports of, whatever the big game is. And a lot of folks end up in the towns or cities that they're taking place in and kind of take over traffic-wise and make parking a pain in the ass and crime rates go up, whatever. Point is that you can find success in virtually anything you do. So, we'll move on the conversation then to another aspect, okay? We've talked a little bit of sports, a little bit of the failures and shortcomings of sports. Let's talk about the aspect of failure and rejection, okay? You might be telling yourself, well, failure comes in all ways, shapes, and forms. You can attempt to succeed at putting in a job application, okay? And they don't want to hire you, hence you get rejected. Well, that's a failure. And you might be saying that, yeah, it absolutely is a failure. Why did I take the time to apply for a job that didn't want me? Well, inevitably because some part of you wanted them. And is it a failure if they said, no, you can't work here? Depends on how you look at it. In some ways, it might be disappointing, but it builds character, and you just got to try all the harder again. And maybe you go back, and maybe you keep going back. And then one day, maybe Joey calls out of work. Joey's sick, right? And all of a sudden, they're down a person. And they're like, well, it's someone, right? And you get the job. So, can't say we haven't fallen into a one or two titles like that, but that's how it goes. So, where does failure then sit as far as the scope of an entire episode? How can you rein failure in by all aspects and means that it can produce and elicit? Because it takes so many different forms, and because it can occur in so many different fashions and functions, what inevitably will lead things like failure to be able to pad an entire episode. And it's like we said, because every failure inherently holds a success, whether you need to look for it on the other side of the pasture. Okay, maybe it doesn't directly benefit the parties involved. Maybe indirectly, other beneficiaries are more likely to gain from a situation, scenario, or event. Maybe complete and utter failure for one results in the most successful of successes for the other. So when you take the blanketed episode of failure, really it comes down to one thing, and one thing alone. On the earlier episode, you know what? Mandy voted on it. So that's what we're doing the episode on. Failure, right? And you might be asking yourself, what kind of failure then? Well, if we didn't do the episode on failure, Mandy would be upset. We would be liars. We said we'd do the episode on failure. It sounded like a great episode. In hindsight, it might prove to be a failure, but every failure leads to a success. So, if we don't reap the benefits of, becoming million of subscribers overnight, right? Which, let's be honest, it'll only take another decade or two if we're, really all in. But in that time frame, if it were to happen overnight, then obviously it wouldn't be a failure. Now, you might be saying, there's no way in hell. We won't let it happen, and fair enough. I don't blame you. But that's the thing. We don't need to get to the million views. We don't need to be million viewers. We don't need any of that. All we need to do is hit that bottom line threshold of getting YouTube's money. Shh, don't tell them that. We claim dibs on being the best of the worst celebrities. So, with that being the case, we get all of the perks and incentives that come with it. Meaning, we get to run commercials on our shit. Which, they're not our commercials. They're going to be YouTube's. And we want them to pay us to do such. But the only way to do that is tricking people to get us those view hours, right? So, all we merely ask, barely an inconvenience to anyone, click on any of the videos, mute them, and go to work. Pull up another tab. This one muted. Go watch something else. We don't blame you. It would be a failure on our part to not deliver that request. To be like, you don't have to watch this. We don't blame you for not wanting to. All we need is the view, and you don't gotta watch it for us to get it. You mute it, you pull up another tab. It's like we don't even exist, right? And you go one further. You hit that subscribification, right? And you're like, oh, hell no. We don't blame you. You're probably going to want to clear your cache after you leave here, okay? Don't blame you for that either. The feds will probably come knocking on your door, but, that's because you could tune into any random channel that's under constant surveillance by them, and, they just show up. So, it has nothing to do with us, but everything to do with you and your habits. So, be sure you delete your cache, and it's probably not our fault if they do show up. That's beside the point. Don't worry about it. Anyhow, the point is that, all you gotta do, mute it, go watch something else. Perfect. Excellent. With that out of the way. Failure would be our part to deliver an episode on failure to Mandy. And with that being the case, we start thinking of failure as components of how you can reflect on it in your life. There are many aspects of failure that can take place all the way from birth to death. Right? You can have iterations of problems that arise at all stages of life. It's a very fragile thing. One of those very famous quotes, the brutish, nasty, and short, right? Those are components and aspects of life that hold reality in the words themselves. Okay? Shorter than you think. Very, very, very brutal across the board. Brutish, probably another, word. More specific definition, but we'll age it with the times. Life's crazy. It's nasty. It's nasty stuff out there. You blend elements of modern technology into it, and it's a failure of a lot of protocols every time that those come to the forefront. You have elements of technology, automobiles that initially, didn't have safety features, didn't have seat belts, maybe resulted in an accident or two, right? But with time, with the understanding, with the additional thoughts going into the future of technology, those aspects and elements began to be accounted for. And then much further, elements of offset crashing, right? Different differentiations between what a vehicle can tolerate stress-wise from all areas of impact. They began adding airbags to multiple directions and areas of vehicles. They began doing new technology on tires, seat belts, anti-lock brake systems, right? Every component had additional thought put into it past what was already originally put in, which was inherently a great invention, right? But it had its shortcomings. If you don't fail, you don't succeed. If Mandy didn't say, hey, let's do an episode on failure, we wouldn't have succeeded in doing one. The episode may be a failure, but the aspect of failure always emits and resounds with a success. Where's that? I don't know. It's Mandy's success. She has changed the universe from here on out. Okay? Into the ether this episode goeth. Mandy said do it, and we do what we do, you knoweth. So, now, out in the ether, this exists, and any failures that Mandy would have felt in us rejecting the title or topic for the episode itself are non-existent. Maybe a little more confidence in their requesting stuff. Maybe a little more pep in their step. Wow, the best, worst celebrity out there took to heart my request and did an entire episode on it. Granted, I did their job for them in coming up with an episode, but, my name's even in the description. Not in the thumbnail. It should be. Danny got theirs in the thumbnail when they requested one on aliens. What's up? Right? Well, it's like, Mandy. Danny was around for more than one stream. It's not that we wouldn't do it. It's that we kind of forgot. But we remembered when we were, going to start. And that accounts for something, okay? It might be a failure that we weren't able to put it in the thumbnail. Okay? But it's a success that we did the episode, regardless of how it is. And it's a success that, we remembered to, throw credit where it's due in the description of the whatever. So, anyhow, failure, right? You can look at it from any angle, any perspective, any aspect of life, in any point in time, from young childhood development to teenage, early adolescence to, young adulthood, old adulthood, middle-aged, old age, right? All of the boomerifications. There are components of failure that are constantly, on a daily basis, put in front of the individual who faces them, right? No shit, right? Okay, fair enough. The point is that pick an age. Say young kids going out for the soccer team at school, right? Well, turns out, unfortunately, kid sucks ass, right? Not any damn good. Coach don't want them. Players don't want them. Varsity damn sure don't want them. And if there's any way possible to keep them off the team, they're going to do it. But is it a failure for the kid that sucks to go out for the team? No. Because inherently, if that kid really wants it, if he really, really wants it, he'll show up every day and be on the side of that field and be practicing and be mimicking the drills and be out on weekends on the field when no one else is there, practicing and mimicking the drills. And by golly, when next season comes around, when next tryouts come around, maybe Happy Gilmore gets his shot at hockey, right? Then you wouldn't have the movie. If Happy Gilmore wasn't rejected from hockey again and again and again, you wouldn't have Happy Gilmore at golf. That's a phenomenal movie, right? Happy Gilmore 2 is coming out soon, finally. We were griping about him earlier on the stream, but Netflix has a couple things going for it. Granted, it's Adam Sandler's baby because he had that contractual obligation with them to release X amount of movies between years, whatever. But they lucked out with him doing Happy Gilmore 2, and them landing that's going to be a success. So whereas Netflix is seen as, in our eyes, a complete failure in a lot of other aspects of their lives and their service that they offer and deliver, or in many cases fail to deliver, there are components of Netflix that still edge out in the success category. Okay? They still have the rights to One Piece. Now they fail at delivering it in a timely manner, and it's embarrassing for them not to. But what they have delivered in the past is a success, and going forward, everything pertaining to it had better be as well. Okay? It's a failure, it takes so long. It's an embarrassment, really. But it's a success when stuff does hit and it's actually good, when it's actually worth watching. When Netflix lands Happy Gilmore 2, if it's worth watching, it'll be a success. So whereas other components and aspects of their service are a failure, because they just can only manage to port content from region to region to try and keep it afloat. What's new? Well, it's new to here. It's been out for 3 years over there. Okay? They're struggling. They're failing to hit that mark for success. And when they do hit it, they're not cashing in on it. They're making choices to fail once again until the next success comes along. Netflix is in a, little situation there. They have lost their identity since they started copying other people's identities. Okay? They set themselves apart once upon a time with the no ads, no commercials, but that era's gone. They saw that their executives could go on vacation 6 times a year the same way the ones at the other streaming services do. Those 6-figure bonuses must be nice. The point is, obviously we wouldn't turn one down. Shit. The point is that while there are many failures, the successes are there. They landed Happy Gilmore 2 to come out. And that is a success. Of course we remember you, Katie. The thing is that not only do we remember you, but we remember that we had actually written another song. Well, not really a song, kind of a little, is a poem about that one time that you were here. And we're going to play it for you now, okay? Now it is on the thumb drum, okay? Not something that we usually do on nights that aren't poetry night. We do those here. This isn't that. But, probably should have been. But, Mandy requested an episode on how can you say failure, right? It would be a failure on our point to not deliver the poem that we wrote. So, Katie was here. We remember. And now they're here again. Excellent. Yes. So, we do remember from you being here before, and believe it or not, we wrote that last time. Because, believe it or not, we think that you said, do you remember me last time too? We remembered you then as well. I think it was like maybe the second or third time that we remembered you now. But, of course we do, Katie. Because, show wouldn't be anything without you. And By anything without you, we mean show was on failure. And it would be a failure on us to not remember who you are. But we do remember who you are, so it's fantastic. But anyhow, we're talking failure tonight, and it's a success that the failure of reminiscing doesn't occur more often, right? It's a complete failure to not have those good times, thinking of the good times, okay, as often as you're really capable of. A little too much time worrying about life, the important stuff, right? Not enough time to reflect on the good times until the good times are gone. Making good times, right? Sitting there stressing about things that are beyond control, the next day's events, the next person's response that you're not going to get, and you know you're not going to get for 24 to 48 to 72 hours. Okay? There's situations and scenarios and events that take what is, a failure and make it a success in one way, shape, or form. Okay? Sometimes the success comes from the sheer amount of time that passes. Sometimes, if it's a, say, touchy topic, touchy event, touchy, aspect or component of life that occurs, then obviously, it's never fun to experience or go through or have anything to do with. But as long as you can find the successes that come of it, the challenges that, benefit on the other side, the gain knowledge from something. Maybe it's not good knowledge to have at the time. Maybe it's a complete failure that you face or faced. I backed into a car. Well, that's a failure. But is it a success if it makes you a better driver inevitably? Well, in some way, shape, or form, absolutely. And that's what we're saying. Every failure has a component or an aspect to be a success. A kid getting rejected from a, school sports team leads to them trying harder. Or pursuing something and finding out they're better at that, or enjoying it more. Say someone later on in life applying for a job, getting rejected, okay? Never fun, especially if it's one that you really wanted. But if something else comes out, something else comes across, something else comes along that supersedes it, surpasses it, and or teaches you a new skill, a new lesson, a new way of seeing things, you meet a new contact, well, then there are components to a failure in getting job A, resulting in aspects of future successes from job B. Job B might suck, but, Joe Schmo at job B might be the business partner of your dreams that you had been waiting to meet. There are hidden successes in every failure. And with Shyzalosophy, you can conjecture, you can fathom, and not worry about it necessarily being rooted in fact. You don't need to prove the fact that you can find a success somewhere else down the road. Now, it's hard to correlate it to maybe a scenario that led to you being there, but inevitably, down the road somewhere, if you were to tie some decisions, tie some happenstance, tie some serendipity together, then inevitably it might potentially lead to you figuring out where exactly that success originated from. Maybe it was the success in knowing that day that you helped your neighbor repair their fence, you learned a lesson that you were able to utilize in doing such for someone else when it really mattered, when they didn't know how to repair theirs. Now that's an example, but you can use it with anything. You learned how to change a car battery. Someone was broken down on the side of the road. It's a failure if they don't know how, but if someone teaches them, and then later they teach someone else, that's a success. Now, you can argue that, you can say success A, success B can inherently be tied to anything, especially if it occurs in the timeline way further down the road from what got you there to begin with. Okay? Sure. And that's why in the hypothetical, in the happenstance, in the ability to rake in the, conjecture, when you sit and fathom and think of exactly where it could tie in from and pinpoint it, hone in on that success, and inflate it and make it even better. So, that's what we got for you tonight. Obviously, we didn't talk about rejection and failure and late adulthood and, the late, adult agehood. But, as we hit all those failures, we'll keep you posted. So, that's all we got for you tonight. Man. Mandy, I guess that was a pretty successful failure that we had. Successful because we did the episode. And, believe you me, it's fantastic because we lived up to our end of the bargain, our end of the deal. Now, you might be saying, well, you failed at making a good one, but that's the thing, Mandy. Never said we would make a good one. We just said we'd make one. And job well done. We'd like to think so. Hey, management, call the studio. They'll call in just a sec. Got a communicator pin from Star Trek. There they are now. Hey, management, has it been long enough? Can we stop the show now? Uh-huh. Oh, what? Oh, someone showed up? Oh, well, we'll ask them, otherwise we get to pick, right? Yeah, fantastic. All right, excellent. Well, they said that we can offer you guys just one chance to pick the next episode, okay? Now, believe you me, it is quite the honor, but we're just going to give you a sec. Otherwise, if you don't want to participate, now's your chance to get out before us, okay? We don't want to turn the lights off on you, so definitely feel free to get out of here before we shut it down, okay? We don't want you tripping in the dark or stealing our shit. Granted, it's not that valuable, but we don't need things walking away. So, anyhow, if you have an idea for the next episode, feel free to throw it in now. Otherwise, get out of here. We will be leaving in approximately this many sips, which is like one. But we will check. Well, can't do that. But what we can do is come up with something on our own. Good, we get to pick. Need to say, you're beginning to stand around and leave a bunch of footprints on our grass, so we don't like it when you start mushing it all down. We don't want your subscription, we want your money, so downvote the shit out of this and give us a buck. Get off our lawn!